Now, you know, we live so much of our lives in that gap between the truth and reality. Now, I think the main difference between the two is that truth is a lot more objective, whereas reality is very subjective. Because my reality is totally different to your reality, and your reality should be different to everyone else's reality. So what does truth and reality have to do with roofing? And in this video, we'll specifically look at roof sarking, and that's sarking under tile roofs here in Australia. Now, a lot of people often ask me, what is roof sarking? This is what roof sarking is. It's a polymer material and it's got two faces. What you see on this side is the non-reflective side, and on the opposite side is the shiny side, which is the reflective side. And we'll cover the most basic question about roof sarking. And people ask, which side is up and which side is down? And the answer to this question brings a bit of reality into the truth. Now, the truth is that there are pros and cons of installing the shiny side up or the shiny side down. Reality is that if you install it with the shiny side up, you have blind roofers, because in the sun it's so shiny that you can't see what you're doing, and you have blind roofers. So the reality is that people install it with the coloured side up. And with the coloured side up, it's a lot easier for the roofer because you get a blue or a green surface to work on and it doesn't blind you. So technically, what difference does this make? So we'll answer this a little bit later, because the next question about roof sarking is, do I need it and what is it specifically for? Now, the code and the manufacturers state that there are two main reasons why you would need roof sarking. Now, number one, sarking is used because the reflective foil reflects 95% of the radiant heat, which means that on the reflective side, it reflects 95% of the heat back to wherever the heat came from. So it's a heat barrier. Number two, it's a moisture barrier. And it's what they call a secondary barrier to water entry into your cavity. Because in case you have a cracked tile or you have leakage through the tiles, the sarking would collect the water, and the purpose then is to drain the water that it's caught from the point of entry all the way down into the gutter. So sarking's got two main purposes. So first of all, we'll look at the radiant properties of sarking, how it works and when it works. And the important thing to note is that the sarking is installed with the reflective side facing down into the roof cavity. So how does it keep heat out in the summer months? That's a good question. And the answer is not as well as if the sarking was installed with the shiny reflective side facing up towards the underside of the tile. But for practical reasons, we can't do that. So how does sarking keep heat away from the roof cavity in the summertime? Now, if you look at the instruction manual for roof sarking, you'll note that the sarking is meant to have a sag between the rafters. There's a maximum sag, and that's between 40 and 50 millimeters. So you're allowed to have up to about 40 millimeters sag between the two rafters. And why the sag? Well, it does two main things. One, from the radiant heat point of view, with the coloured side facing up, the sag introduces an air gap. And it is the air gap in here that keeps the heat out, because air is a good insulator. So you do need an air gap between the top of the sarking and the underside of the tile to provide you your insulation layer. So in the summertime, the air gap does the work of keeping the heat out and reducing the amount of heat that goes into your ceiling cavity. Now, in the wintertime, something else opposite happens. And in the winter, it's really good to have the reflective side facing down, because what happens is that the upper side gets cold, but as you heat your house up, your ceiling cavity gets a lot warmer. So it's a lot warmer in the cavity than it is outside. So what happens is that with the shiny side facing inwards, it reflects all the heat that's in your cavity, and it doesn't allow the heat to escape. So it reflects the heat back into your cavity, keeps your cavity warm, then it makes the house a lot easier to warm up and not lose heat. So in the wintertime, really great to have the reflective side facing inwards. So you can't have the roof sarking achieve two opposite things, but you can rely on the fact that it's got a reflective side, and it's going to work in the wintertime to keep your house warm. And in the summertime, the reflective side works less, and you got to rely on the fact that you deliberately create a sag on your sarking with the air gap, and that reduces the heat entry into your cavity. So thermally, that's how roof sarking works. Now, it's important to note that there is a sag between the rafters. And on most tile roofs here in Australia, this is where reality departs from the truth. Because when most tilers install sarking, they want it to look good. So what they do is, the sarking is stretched tight between the rafters. So when you look at a tile roof being laid and you see that the sarking's taut, it looks really good because it's a tight roof, right? And this seems to be what most tilers like, nice tight sarking on the roof. But that's not how it's supposed to be installed. The problem with taut sarking is that it does not create a channel for water to travel if it does get onto the sarking. You haven't got the little sag in the middle where water will run, and instead water drifts right across the sarking between the batten and the sarking. And what does it find? It finds the nail hole where the sarking's been pierced because the batten has been driven into the rafter. So there's a little pinhole at the rafter, and now you're forcing the water to travel between the batten and the sarking across the pinhole, and then this is where the water will get in on the pinhole. Whereas if you had a sag in the sarking, the water runs along the sag and it doesn't run across to the sides to where the nail holes are. Now, I'm sure you'll find a lot of roofers out there who will tell you that taut sarking is the way that it should be installed. It's their reality, but really it's not the truth. Because the truth is, you need to know exactly why sarking is installed, and we install sarking to the manufacturer's recommendations and also to the code, because this is how sarking is supposed to work. Some people may ask, well, what's the big deal? Why can't we still put sarking in taut? Well, the big deal is that you've totally wasted the cost of the material and the labor to install the sarking, because sarking that's not installed correctly will, one, not provide the thermal properties, although most people won't tell the difference between the two. But secondly, when water gets onto the sarking, it leads to a whole lot of problems. Because from a leakage point of view, sooner or later, you'll get a leak. And when the water gets onto the sarking, and there's no dedicated channel for the water to run, to take the water to the gutter, then water goes all over the place. And one of the things with taut sarking is that the edge of the sarking tends to have a roll in it. So the bottom edge of the sarking tends to curl up and have a bit of a roll in it. And when that happens, you can have a leak that originates at one point, and the water will run down the sarking into the curl and then run laterally either direction and appear someone else totally different. And it makes it so hard to track down the source of the leak, because where the water is leaking is not where the water is coming in from. So water tracking across the roof when you have water under sarking. And the second thing is taut sarking. As you can see on this particular example of our roof, water that runs on the sarking then gets caught by the batten, and then there's a capillary action that draws the water across onto the nail holes, and you get tiny leaks that come down through the nail holes. And long term, that batten gets wet over continuous cycles, and the batten will eventually rot. So some tilers will say, well, we can't have a droop between the rafters because the owner will complain that you got flapping sarking in the ceiling. Well, that's why there's this thing called a security pad, and it's in the installation manual. You have a security pad that is installed between the rafters, and it provides pressure between the underside of the batten and the top of the sarking, so that the sarking has got no give in it. So the sarking's tight and there's no flap. And I've seen lots of sponges used as security pads, but that's what they're for. They're there to prevent the sarking from flapping in the wind, and it also forces a channel for where the water can flow. And where the two layers of sarking lap, it forces the top layer down onto the bottom layer, and if it's on the edge, it eliminates that curve that forms, that curl, that roll that forms. And it means that you haven't got a problem where water comes in and then it spreads across, because water, when it comes in, will run along the channel all the way to the gutter. And the last thing that a lot of roofers don't bother with is the anti-ponding board right at the gutter. Because a lot of roofers can get away with missing out on this little detail, because any leaks will go into the eaves and it won't appear in the house. So a lot of owners won't notice it happening. But the anti-ponding board is supposed to take the water along the sarking and into the gutter, and not into the dip between the fascia board and the rafter. Because we mustn't forget that when the fascia is installed, it's installed at a higher level than the projection of the top of the batten. So it's actually higher than where the tiles project, so that that last tile sits on the same plane as all the other tiles. Because if the fascia was lowered to the same level as the top of the battens, then that last tile will have a bit of a kink in it. And you look at the roof, the last tile actually has a greater slope. So the fascia is actually moved up, and that makes the need for that anti-ponding board all the more important. So there we are, the realities and the truths on roof sarking. And in my travels, I see more of other roofers' realities than the actual truth. So the lesson here is that we really have to figure out what is true, and then formulate our reality to try to match the truth as much as possible. Because if we don't, then we can really create a reality that is far from the truth, and then we embrace it as the truth. And that can be quite deadly.